So in this tutorial I want to show you how you can actually use your push to control parameters of your Volca drum or another MIDI controller, how to record and write automations and envelopes here as well. So first we need to set up the whole routing here, and as you have made your own preset already or you're using the preset which comes in the pack you bought, you can double click on the Volca editor preset here, and now it's already set up. All those parameters are being sent out from this one track being routed to the different channels here. We need an editor obviously for the Volca. Let's use this one here. We're gonna drag and drop it into the editor section, and in the different channels in here we have the receive Max for Live devices set up. So this will all being received now. As you can see, it's being sent out to channel 1. Okay, so let's have a listen on the kick drum. I can now route in MIDI or play this on itself. I need to route back audio obviously first, because now the audio from my Korg Volca drum is going nowhere at the moment, so I need an audio track for the stuff being sent back in, for the sound being sent back in. So I could use an audio track here and route this back in via external in 3.4, where my Korg Volca drum is being back routed in. But a better solution for this, which will solve a little bit of a latency issue here, is to use a MIDI track. And let's put it outside and use the external instrument device from Ableton Live. So let's go to instruments, and you have the external instruments in here. We put it on the track, set the MIDI to our port, and route the audio back in. So this becomes handy later on when you actually want to play stuff, notes, MIDI notes from Ableton Live being sent to the Korg Volca drum. This will reduce a lot of latency issues here for playback. Okay, so let's put in a few MIDI notes. So we just gonna use those tracks in here now. I can send any MIDI note in here now. Because it's being sent on channel 1, it will always go to the channel 1 or drum part 1. So if I play this now, I can hear this kick. Let's move down the tempo. Obviously I can just play on here, or I could have my patterns on the Volca drum being running on here, but changing the sound via the editor from Ableton Live. Okay, so now let's have a look on the push, because we can actually access all parameters on here via the push display. So I set up push banks, it's called, so you can actually go through the different parts here in the editor, and we have different presets on here. So the first one is the gain of all 6 parts. So you can see I'm changing the gain of part 1. If I go to drum part 2, I have the next gain on here. So all 6 gains are being on the first row, then the pan, then the waveguide. So this is the whole waveguide section, and then it goes from the bit section. So you can see it on the screen now here, the bit section, the fold section, the drive section, and so forth. Plus you have the whole access to each parameter of each layer on each channel. So as there are quite a lot of parameters here, it's a bit finding your way first in here. So I now access layer 1, the level, the pitch, the amount of the modulation, the rate, and so on and so forth. And I can go to channel 1 layer 2 here as well. This cable is really annoying. Okay, and I can now, it's changing the master volume now, so maybe let's set this up like this. Okay, so and I'm now in channel 1, layer 2. Change the stuff in here, so let me play this. And if I want to go back to channel 1, and maybe set the release a bit shorter. Yes, so this way I can actually access all parameters via the push. If I want to access this via a different MIDI controller, obviously this is possible as well. So let's take this X-Touch Mini here from Behringer. I like it because it's quite inexpensive and it has endless rotary faders. So for example, if you want to access different parameters here, it gives you a visual feedback of what is actually being set up. So if we go into the MIDI map menu and now selecting the send, for example, and syncing this up to this knob here, leaving the MIDI map menu, now I can control the send button here, and when I'm moving this send button, you can see this is giving me the visual feedback on here on the controller where it actually is. So if I'm now sync up a second value to the same knob, I can control multiple parameters in here. So, and you can see they are now being synced because they are on the same controller, obviously. So I now could send up something else in channel 2. I'm not sure what sound it is. Let's have a listen. Yeah, that sounds alright. So let's set this up to D1 for now. Here again, any node would play the same sound because we're sending those all out to channel 2, which are going to our drum part number 2 here. Okay, so let's have a listen how this sounds. This needs to be played. So I can now control the send from drum part 1 and drum part 2 with the same external MIDI controller. And this way you can get much more control if you're doing a live set, for example, over your Korg Volca drum, because you can have certain presets set up here on a MIDI controller which you want to use. I mean, it's all doable and it's a different approach, and it's a great approach as well inside the Korg Volca drum as well. But just to give you that example with the send button here, for example, so if we go to drum part 1, let's take layer 1 and 2. It doesn't make any difference which layer is selected because both layers are going into the send section here on the same time. So let's say I want number 1 being sent in here and to the maximum level, and I want number 2 just being sent into the send level a little bit lower. If I'm just moving this knob, it's picking up from the last value it was, so which was the maximum level here. So it's already on maximum. If I'm now putting it down to 0, it's now on 0. But if I'm going back to number 1 and I just want to, let's say, put it down a little bit, if I'm moving this knob, it picks up from the last value it was, which was 0, and this is set to 0 now, so I have to move it all the way up. I mean, this creates some musicality here as well, and it's nice, you know, it's just a different approach. If you want to control this thing different, the editor, the Max for Live editor, Volca drum editor, Max for Live for Ableton Live, is one way of doing that. So obviously you can record or write automations in envelopes, and I have to say that the Korg Volca drum is not too keen on getting a lot of CC messages on the same time, so a lot of sounds changes might lead to a delay in sound here, and that the Korg Volca drum just is not able to handle it. So be very careful with like automations here. I'm quickly going to show you how to set this up. So you can use your push or MIDI controller to record those envelopes automations, or we can just do it on the editor itself. So for example, if we have our automation arming pressed on and then playing this kick drum now coming, or this MIDI note coming from Ableton Live on channel 1. So let's say we want the send button to go up in this one bar, so we start at the maybe change the decay here as well. And maybe have a second here, second noise now. So let's switch the view here and let's find the parameter we want to change. Maybe the pitch, maybe let's okay, so let's so that's just a very easy and not very that interesting example here for sound wise, but you get the idea. You can change a lot of stuff in automations, record those via MIDI controller or via your push, and then have this being happening in this MIDI clip here. So you can see you have those changes in here. You can write those actually as well, so let's write a few more. So maybe we gonna take the release here. I just clicked on the release button and I'm now getting this parameter being shown in here. I have a lot of parameters in here because I have so many parameters. So if I want to find the right one quick, I just go to the editor and click on the one, so release here, and then it jumps automatically to this parameter in the menu in my envelope view down here. And now I can change the envelope in here via my mouse, write some nice automations, maybe change those if I need to with the whole setting in here. So this is just random, but you now can see when I'm pressing play, the release is being automated. Nice one.